Hello, I'm Paul Hutton, editor of Smart Highways magazine. We're just getting ready to show you another session from JCT Traffic Signals Symposium 2018. But before, let me just remind you of a few things. First of all, if you're at JCT this year or are affiliated to the organisation, you can sign up for a free copy of Smart Highways magazine. Just go to the link at the bottom of the screen. Also, mark your cards for the ITS UK Summit, 26th and 27th of November at the Bristol Harbour Hotel. It will be a fantastic day talking about implementation. And next year, don't forget, Trafex, 2nd to 4th of April. It is the biggest and best Trafex yet. Don't miss it.
Tom Crowther and Emma Robshaw, both with a background in WSP in Leeds, both with a background at Sheffield Hallam, and mathematical degrees. So those of us that just about scrape through our ONC and HNCs can sit there feeling humble. Tom is the urban ITS lead currently at WSP in the Leeds office. He's a car enthusiast, which I suppose is always useful when you're dealing with mover, because you see plenty coming past you. Emma is taking an interest in moving graduates through Sheffield, Hallam into our industry, which is always commendable. And she's the bottom bit here says she wants to be a keen runner. Has bought a Fitbit, so she's halfway there. And they'll be talking about one of the elements that are buried away in Mover, which is 6MRR, which is the automatic stage selection for right-hand turns. That's as much as I know about 6MMR. So let's all hope I learn a bit more afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony. That's a bit loud. So yeah, automatic stage selection for fully signalised right turns. It's a facility in Mover, a special facility, and most people haven't used it. Before I get started, I just want to kind of raise it to the room, and so has anyone actually used this before? If you could, just show your hands. Probably looking over there, but everyone's like kind of doing this. Anyone else has used it in the room? Yeah. Once? One? Okay, fair enough. Disappeared. So today we're going to talk about two schemes. One scheme's currently active and been running 12 months and is located in Rotherham, which Emma's going to talk about. And the other scheme is a concept idea, which I've been working on as part of Leeds City Council. So the concept's been developed in Vism, Vism 10 with PC Mover 3 using Mover 8. So I'll talk about that in a bit. But first things first, a few acknowledgements. I kind of want to thank Rotherham Council for letting us present on this scheme today, which is currently active, and I hope you're pleased with their job, if you're out there, Rob, somewhere. I also want to thank Motus, the signal contractor on the job, for providing great services and allowing us to use their technology to roll this out. A big thanks to Joel Dodsworth, who pretty much led the scheme for Rotherham, who's no longer with WSP, and he's now the Leeds UTMC manager, so congratulations to him. And a big thanks to Leeds City Council for letting us present on this concept. And again, I must reiterate, this is a concept, and it's an idea that hopefully will go through consultation and then get implemented in a few years' time. So first things first, over to you, Emma.
So, this is a scheme located to the south of Rotherham. It's a key junction along the A631 corridor, and that is a sort of north-east to south-west movement. To the north, that's how we get to the town centre. To the west, that is a very short route to the M1 via junction 33. And just to the south here is Whiston's residential area. In 2014, the junction served over 4,000 vehicles in the PM weekday peak. And also in 2014, an options appraisal report was written, and the mover design, as it was back then, is what we can see in this image. And the mover design was one of Rotherham's first big implementations. So moving on from that, the junction was monitored to look at improving it even further. And what we've got here in terms of physical improvements is a crossing on the eastbound exit. That means that all the crossings around the junction are fully signalised for pedestrian use. And but the main event of this improvement was the signalising the westbound right turn, so turning towards the north, which gives us our 2 right turns signalised. So this is using automatic stage selection and the 6 MRR code. So this slide shows us the junction staging and how the 6 MRR code has been used according to the AG45 guidance. In this case, the code is 6234, and it's only used for the first 4 stages. So the first one is the double right turn. You've got the eastbound only, westbound only, and then the ahead movements only together. That is how the code is used, and we put it into link 1 to demand stage 1. So this slide shows how many times stages are called throughout a typical day. So overnight and into the morning peak, you can see that stage 4, which is the ahead movements only, and reversion is the one that is called alongside stage 5, which is the side roads. So that fluctuates throughout the night, but going into the morning peak, we can see that stage 1 is demanding an awful lot more because of the variability of movements and the demands at the junction. So where we see stage 1, that kind of matches up to the amount of times the ahead movement and the side road movements are demanded as well. We can also infer from this image here that as drivers drive home from the M1, the stage 2, which also allows the right turn into Whiston's residential area, is called much more often towards the end of the PM peak, even though stage 1, which allows the right turn, is called consistently throughout the day. These graphs have been created from independent Bluetooth journey time data. What we can see is the 4 approaches and how the journey time has differed between March 2017, which was the only one right turn signalised and kind of normal mover, and the other line is March 2018, where we can see quite a big reduction in the journey time in the PM peak with 6 MRR. Pleasley Road is the road which the residential access is from. We can see the PM peak slightly increases, and this is why. In order to manage the network effectively and give priority to the main road, when exit blocking is detected travelling northbound, a new data set is triggered and is implemented into the controller, and what that does, it aims to reduce total green time and green given to Pleasley Road. So this is a table which sort of backs up that sort of theory, but even though Pleasley Road looks like it loses out quite a bit, actually, in terms of journey time difference, it's not a lot. But if you can reduce the green time ever so slightly on that approach in order to manage the network, you get quite a big benefit to the other movements. So we continue to support Rotherham with monitoring this junction and along with supporting other junctions around their network. So that is kind of our single 6 MRR case study. It's out on site and it's working very well. Now Tom is going to talk you through his concept.
Thank you. Right then, let's start with this concept. So let's start with the problem first of all. Behind me, above here, we've got a current problem on the Leeds City network to the north of Leeds. It's on the key orbital route. It's currently a 3-lane priority roundabout at high speed. 40 mile an hour is the speed limit, however it's national speed limit to the west, therefore traffic generally hits this roundabout at quite high speeds. Key problems for this roundabout is pedestrian and cycle safety, pretty much non-existent. No one uses it from a pedestrian cycle point of view, even though we have a school just to the southwest of that junction. It works quite well for general traffic. As you can imagine, if you're quite an aggressive driver, this works quite well. The key network problem at this point is southbound. There's a restriction on the network, and it often exit blocks from Headingley all the way back to this junction, which then locks up the roundabout. So, the proposal. Our task was to come up with an option which was neutral to general traffic, provided network management control, provided pedestrian and cycle facilities by also allowing for bus priority. So this is the concept, and I've displayed this in the Vism model to prove that it is a concept and an idea. So as we can see, we've got fully signalised movements on all approaches, with the left turns on give way and also signalised crossings. Each of the right turn movements and all approaches are being separately signalled. So I built this up in Vism 10 and running it alongside PC Mover 3 with Mover 8. And the reason we've got double MRR is because we've got 8 stages. So the principle that was applied at Wiston is being applied here twice. So if you notice, the SD codes are getting even more complicated, but I don't want to go into technical detail and overwhelm you all. But basically the principles apply the same for all approaches. And movers making decisions depending on the demand at the junction, what the best sequence is for the first 4 stages, and then the second 4 stages depending on the traffic demand. So I've run the model. This is a morning peak in Vism. I've taken the green outputs throughout the morning peak, and this shows the green time per stage over the morning peak. Some keen eyes will know that stages 2 and 6 don't appear, and the reason for that is because the way the demand works at this junction. A lot of the traffic is coming inbound to the city, therefore stages 2 and 6 are basically more for the outbound movements, therefore they don't need to appear in this morning peak. However, the key point of this is that you've got a lot of variability between the stages. Movers constantly optimizing and changing the green periods of the stages throughout the cycle time. If you can kind of look at the first 3 quarters of the peak, you've got a quite average green splits between the stages. Towards the back end of the peak, it starts utilizing the less stages due to network constraints. So, an overview of the network. While the focus is on 66 MRR, which is the crossroads in the middle, it's not the only junction in question, and it's a part of a T-junction, 3 pedestrian crossings and a bus gate, with the key intention to provide bus priority pedestrian and cycle facilities at this junction. In terms of capacity then and performance and results, we've done some basic analysis, and I kind of want to demonstrate this, is if we take the base model as the roundabout as a starting point, and we take account of the exit blocking at the roundabout every morning as the base situation, putting in a crossroads and with fixed time into the Vism model and distributing that queue effectively gives us a 40% delay saving. However, if we run 6 MRR with Mover in this network, we're reaching delay savings up to 42%, and that's taking the whole network outputs from Vism. And the key reason for that is, even though the exit blocking happens southbound, what we end up doing is we hold the queues on the right turn and the north approaches, such that every other movement doesn't get any delay. So that's why there's so much benefit in this. And that's kind of key reiterated, because you're signalising each individual movement, you've got control at any movement you want. So you can start putting in network strategies to control certain movements to avoid the problem southbound getting any worse. So, kind of summarising that, 6MRR is obviously a specialist facility within Mover. It's not really used. However, looking at the results from both an active site and a concept in Vism, it's shown really good performance results. And I would actively encourage you to explore it. Have a look at AG45, look at TRL's guidance, and see if it would work for you. Vism and PC Mover is definitely a good tool to test this out. I also tested it out in Mover Tool Simulator package on Mark Crabtree's request to see if this would work as well. I believe it's not been done, the 6MRR before, according to Mark. He says it's not been tested, but using this simulation, I proved that it does work, and it is really useful. Just to summarise where this could be used, basically, I have a client of mine that I work with quite regularly. They've currently got a crossroads on the main corridor that runs Scoot. The problem with this junction is that, as always with Scoot, the right turn variability is cycle by cycle, and it can vary quite quickly. Due to a college, a retail park, and other distribution areas, you can soon get quite a high demand on the right turners. The problem with Scoot is, by the time it sees that and reacts, because of the cycle time, the queue builds up and it affects all the head movements. So my intention is to look at whether Mover within this corridor will be a better solution, because it would react to these right turners a lot faster, get rid of the queue so then it doesn't become a problem and it's not catching his feet. I mean, the client's a little bit dubious because it's very Scoot orientated, but I feel with a bit of maybe Vism modeling, a bit of PC Mover, and a bit of linking in between them, that we can prove that this is a better solution. So hopefully that's okay. Any questions from everybody? It's nice, sweet and short.
Okay, Tom. Who's got the other microphone? There he is. Come down, please, Tom.
Tom Siddle, Four-Way Consulting. Through your experience of running this out on street, have there been any safety concerns, even sort of during validation or some safety auditors, of the flexibility of the staging and drivers getting maybe used to seeing one thing and then when a different stage is called going through a red?
Yeah, that's the first question everyone asks. Yeah, obviously it's raised a concern because there's not consistency. However, watching the junction work, and as drivers get used to how Mover's more adaptable, people then start appreciating that it's working on traffic demand, and they start paying a bit more attention. So there was safety concerns at first, and with all these things you have to try it out and see how drivers are going to behave. But from what I've seen, drivers behave quite well at it. They are very attention. They know that they're either going to have one sequence or the next. Through the PM peak, it gets quite consistent, so they know what's coming up. So the regular users, obviously through AM and PM peak, obviously they get to know what the sequence is going to be. The nighttime users, they're not really very aware, and it's usually green light as they approach anyway, so they're just carrying on with their journey. So while I appreciate that, I haven't seen any cause for concern.
Hi, it's always good to see a roundabout taken out and replaced by crossroads. That makes obvious sense. I'm a bit surprised you ended up with 8 stages though. Have you maximised the time sharing between, say, right turners and the corresponding left turners, for example?
Yeah, the reason for the 8 stages, not most of the time, they don't always run, but it's having the option there available. So usually the most efficient way to save all demand is to run 1, 4, 5, 8, so just 4 stages. That's the most efficient way. What it'll naturally do is it'll run the other stages alongside just to benefit certain movements. So the cycle time, I think from remembering the modelling, they didn't run all below 140. So it was running all 8 stages in less than 140 seconds in cycle time. And all pedestrian cyclist demands run alongside traffic. So in terms of pedestrian cyclist delays, it's quite good.
Can I make a comment, Tony? Where's he coming from, he says? Can I make a comment, Tony? You yeah. I'd just like to say something in reply to what you were saying about the question about safety.
Yep.
And looking at the variability. And as you know, I've been lucky enough to spend quite quite a bit of time over in Australia and actually in Dublin as well. And actually this answers both questions from that perspective. One thing that shocked me about SCAT signals is because you can have so many variable stages, so you can have alternates of stages, although they call them phases. I think what we find is, and I think Tony might back me up here, is that the motorists, they get to know pretty quickly that you've got to be on your metal, haven't you? You cannot literally expect it to follow the same sequence every time. And the one thing that I've picked up from that is you can gain some incredible efficiency by having a lot of variability. The other thing as well is the multiple stages. It's not unusual for a SCATS junction with its alternatives to have something like 10 or 12 different possibilities. I mean, you're talking about the double diamonds and all these sort of things like this. It's looking a lot like it, isn't it, Tony? But it is just a question, I think, of it's letting drivers get used to it. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I think that in a local situation, just from my experience, I think they will get used to it.
Yeah, I think the key thing to do with like any mover site is when you put it on, drivers take a while to get kind of adapt to it, the way it changes. If they've been used to like fixed time for a long time and know what the signal timings do, when you put a mover site on, naturally you have to let drivers kind of adapt to it changing around a lot quicker. So when you do that, you do a bit of a validation exercise, you let drivers adopt, and then you go back and you validate again to be a bit more efficient. So you're always constantly battling with how drivers react to the junction. But I think if you give them that time and let them appreciate the junction, they'll soon learn to adopt and make the most efficient out of the junction. So, yeah.
Any more? Nope.
You initially mentioned walkers and cyclist safety.
Yep.
What sort of green times do they get, and do they share with drivers? Do they have their own green times?
So the pedestrian demands and cyclists obviously run with token crossings on the crossroads. So there a lot of the staging is with traffic. In terms of the green times and the wait times, I don't know off the top of my head. It's not been a priority, but I could look into that definitely. It's probably going to be doing something more at detailed design. Okay.
Okay, I think we'll call an end to it then, but thanks very much for explaining that to us.
Cheers, thank you.